Today we are in the Valley of the Kings. Now, if you don't know what the Valley of the Kings is, it is a place where over 60 of Egypt's pharaohs are buried, and it is a place that in 1922, Howard Carter made the discovery of King Tut's tomb. Now, I'm going to resist the temptation here to start singing King Tut by Steve Martin, and instead, I'm just going to go ahead and roll the footage.
While the east bank of Luxor is home to ancient temples like Karnak and Luxor, along with the modern city of Luxor, on the west bank of the Nile, there's the occasional small village, but it's mostly open space and vast desert. In ancient times, the largest temple complex in the world stood here, although virtually none of that complex still stands except these, the Colossi of Memnon. Scattered remains of old temples can still be found.
And it's really cool because as you're driving, you can see active archaeological digs going on all around you.
But for the most part, there's not a lot over here but remote, unforgiving, barren desert. And that made this the perfect hiding spot for the ancient pharaohs' most important treasure,
themselves. So, very basically, starting at Saqqara, ancient pharaohs were building pyramids as tombs. It culminated with the three great pyramids that we see in Giza, but there's also the Step Pyramid and the Bent Pyramid at Saqqara. Then we have the three great pyramids at Giza. But here's the problem. They kind of stand out like beacons to thieves because pharaohs buried themselves with all of their earthly treasures because they believed that you would actually get up in your body and continue on living in the afterlife. So they brought everything they could possibly need, all their riches. So most of their tombs were looted almost right away. So around 1550 BCE, pharaohs finally got wise and decided to start hiding their tombs in the Valley of the Kings. So far, 63 tombs have been found here. Some people think there might be more still to be discovered, TBD. But unfortunately for the pharaohs, all this hiding was done in vain because almost all of them were completely looted, with the exception, most notably, of the tomb of King Tut, which is why it was such a revelation at the time because all of his stuff was still in there.
As you descend into the tomb of King Tut, it's hard not to imagine Howard Carter and his British patron, Lord Carnarvon, being here and opening the passage for the first time, peering into the dark and seeing, in Carter's words,
"Wonderful things, strange statues and animals and gold, everywhere the glint of gold."
It was from this very place that so much changed for Egypt.
What's wild, though, is when you're down there, you know that this was such a momentous discovery, but the room itself is pretty small and it's packed with people, so it's kind of hard to really enjoy being down there. But on one side, you'll find the sarcophagus that's still there.
The walls around the burial chamber depict Tutankhamun alongside images of the gods, performing various ceremonies in preparation for the afterlife.
And then on the other side, you'll find King Tut himself in a climate-controlled glass case.
He's the only pharaoh still in the Valley of the Kings that remains interred in his tomb. All others have been moved to Cairo and placed in museums. The ancient pharaohs found themselves in a bit of a contradiction. They ruled as gods, but were man enough to fear death and what it may bring. Through these intricate tunnels, armed with the ancient roadmap of the Book of the Dead and their endless treasures, they hoped to find themselves in the good graces of whatever lay beyond death. Each of the 63 tombs in the Valley of the Kings tells a story. For instance, this is the tomb of Tausert and Setnacht. Tausert was the wife of the pharaoh Seti II, and for a brief time after his death, she took power for herself. But her successor, Setnacht, ejected her from her own burial tomb and took it for himself. One of the most shocking things about the Valley of the Kings is all of the color. Because these were all buried underground, much of the color remains on the walls. All the ancient temples above ground would have been painted like this when they were built, but sun, sand, wind, and time have slowly worn away that color over the last several thousand years. Here, you can get a sense of just how colorful ancient Egypt would have been. It's also fascinating that over the course of about 3,000 years, Egyptian art didn't change much. You can look at something painted in 2500 BCE, 1500 BCE, or 500 BCE, and they all might look different, but they would all look like Egyptian art. And you can't do that in modern day. Looking at the art from even a few hundred years ago is vastly different from today.
So we're deep in this tomb, and it's huge. Compared to King Tut's, it's comical. It's cool to see that some of the like gold-ish looking color is left in here. This is where the actual tomb was. Wow.
I think is the craziest thing about all of these tombs and the artwork and the decorations, every single inch of the tomb, is that this was never meant to be seen by other people. These were burial chambers. They were closed off, and in theory, no one would ever go in them. It was for the pharaohs. So they did all this artwork, and they filled it up with all this stuff. And no one was ever supposed to see it.
And here we are, thousands of years later. Yeah.
They just put so much care and effort into it, and it was never meant to be seen by a human. It's supposed to live in darkness forever. How wild is that?
That is wild.
The tomb of Ramses IV was originally intended to be much larger, but with the death of the pharaoh at a young age, construction was cut short. And believe it or not, in the 18th and 19th centuries, this tomb was used as a hotel by visitors to the Valley of the Kings. In the Valley of the Kings, you feel a sense of eternity weighing down on this scorched earth. The entire place is a reminder that man's quest for immortality is as old as civilization itself.